It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. If you go to emailrevealer.com, you get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. If you order the book from the website, you can get an autographed copy, but you can still order it up on Amazon.com as well. OppermanReport.com. You go to OppermanReport.com, you got a member section on there where it's exclusive content. You can only pick it up by becoming a member. We have a documents section in there with all kinds of new documents. I just added the affidavits in the Trump-Epstein rape lawsuit. Okay, this is fresh off the presses, guys. If you can Google all day long online, you won't find these affidavits. You'll find the lawsuit, the complaint. I got that up there too, but I got the affidavits. They're placed there as an exhibit. Okay, got a very special show for you today. A lot of our listeners are familiar with the Arlis Perry story, the murder in Stanford, Connecticut, Stanford, by that college up there in California. We have a new witness who's just come forward. He's only done a couple of interviews, and his name is Brian McCracken. So, Brian, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me, Ed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, because I know you're under a little bit of stress, all the sudden, press, New York Post and everything. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who's Brian McCracken?
Well, I've been working as a technical writer for some years now. I've worked with companies like Apple Computer, Lockheed, Sun Microsystems, Sunsoft, etc. I'm the guy who writes the manuals for the computer, which you pull out of the box and you say, hey, I don't need this manual. You throw it in the trash. I wrote that. Yeah,
those things are really hard to understand. Can't you make them a little simpler?
Say again?
Those instructions are so hard to understand. Can't you make them a little simpler?
Yeah. Well, that's my job. I guess I don't do it well enough. Sorry, Ed.
You got to practice, my friend. You're retired now, right? I think.
No, I'm not retired. I'm still working away. I find that working is life, and I enjoy working. So there it is. I keep doing it.
Gotcha.
What can I say?
Now, how old are you about?
64.
64. And what part of the country do you live in?
I live on the West Coast, in the San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley. For most of your listeners, they would recognize that.
Okay, now, but back, I guess this was 1974. It was 1974 when this Arlis Perry murder took place in this church over there in Stanford Memorial Church on the grounds of Stanford University. Now, what brought you to that area? Yeah, what brought you to that area?
Well, I was going to school at the time nearby, I believe. It was Foothill College that I was attending, and they're right nearby Stanford. I had friends over there, and I tended to go over to the Treasurer Union coffee shop just because it was a fun place to hang out. I knew people. The food was good. They had live bands, and they had a new thing over there called video games. It was a electronic game set up, I think, by Nolan Bushnell, which allowed you to fly a little spaceship through space and shoot down other spaceships. I thought that was kind of interesting, and so I would go over there occasionally and enjoy the food, enjoy the bands, and enjoy playing the game.
Those were the days, huh?
Yeah, those were the days.
Yeah, I'm 50.
And so I would go over there fairly frequently, and this particular night, I left there around their closing time. It must have been around 11:30, 12 o'clock, something like that. And at that point, I walked down, maybe a few hundred yards. There's a road or alleyway which goes from the Treasurer Union coffee shop towards the Stanford Memorial Church. And I was going that way because I was parked over by the Hoover Tower, which is right nearby the church. And as I walked by the church, I heard this strange music, very odd music coming out of the church. It was flute music. Now, I knew that there were no public events of any kind going on, this being around midnight on a Saturday night. And so I walked into the church, and there I saw this guy.
Well, let me stop you there. Let me stop you there for a second. Now, how often would you walk by this church?
Well, fairly frequently. As often as I would go over to eat over at Tressiter, I would park my car usually in the same place near the Hoover Tower, and I'd go over there, I don't know, maybe once every couple of weeks, something like that, probably frequently.
Now, but before that night, did you ever walk into that church before?
Oh, yeah. I've been there quite often. They do have public events there. They would have everything from peace rallies to chorales for Christmas. And so, I would go over there fairly often. It was a nice, pleasant place, and it was very interesting architecture, a lot of stained glass, and a very interesting interior. So it's a fairly frequent place for me to go.
Now, that night when you heard the flute music, and you were about to walk into the church, did you have an uneasy feeling, or you were just casual? Hey, there's nothing strange going on. Just let me go in and check out what's going on.
I did not have any uneasy feeling at all. I was curious, and I thought it was very odd. And the music itself, I'm not a music expert, but I listen to music often enough and enough variety, and particularly classical, that I think I would have recognized, if not the specific piece, but the style of playing. And this was completely unique. It sounded to me like it was a made-up piece for the flute. And it was, I don't want to call it sinister necessarily, but it sounded very individualistic, very peculiar. It sounded as though someone was putting a lot of emotion into the music, let's put it that way. Okay. But no, I was not uneasy. So I walked on into the church. Should I go from there?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I walk into the church, and the church is set up with double doors. And so I walked in the first door, and I'm in a sort of an alcove, or lobby, I guess you might call it. And then there's a second set of doors. They're large, very heavy oaken doors. I opened those up, and I'm facing the altar, and there's a long aisleway between the pews, and on the left-hand side for me, there's a guy standing up in the lectern where normally they preach for the Mass, and he's playing this silver flute, and he's a white guy, but he's wearing an Afro wig. Now, this was really weird, in my opinion. The guy's playing this flute music. He's up in the lectern. He's wearing a wig. He's kind of a skinny white guy. And then I shift my eyes to the right, and there's a naked woman lying flat on her back on the altar. And she's staring up at the ceiling. And so I walk down the aisle. I get within about 20 feet of them. And while I'm doing this, the guy playing the flute, he's staring at me, and he doesn't seem particularly happy to see me. He's giving me a sort of glaring look. I look over at the girl, and apparently she has sensed the fact that someone has come into the church, and she turns her head to the left. She looks at me. She gives me a sort of a half smile, and then she turns her head back and stares back at the ceiling again.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. Now, the guy playing the flute with the Afro wig, what was he wearing?
Oh, I was mostly struck by the wig, but my impression was that he was wearing a long-sleeved shirt, perhaps a button-down collar. I couldn't see the bottom half of him because he was up in the lectern and he was hidden. But he just looked like a casually dressed college-type boy from Stanford.
Just regular clothes, nothing occult ritual-type clothing.
No, he wasn't wearing any cloaks or anything. He didn't have any makeup on, didn't have long fingernails or weird rings with gold on them or anything. He just looked like a college student with a funny-looking afro wig playing a silver flute.
And I think back, when you walked in that night, did you notice any odd smells, or was it the normal incense church kind of smell?
There was no outstanding smells. The only thing I might say was that perhaps I could smell the odor of burning candles.
But typical of a church.
Excuse me?
But the typical church smell that you would normally smell in any of these old churches back in those days.
Yeah, that's right. There was nothing unique about that. The girl, as she was lying on the altar, she had candles burning on either side of her, and perhaps where the smell came from there. I don't know.
Now, the candles, were these like red candles, white candles? Remember?
I remember they were white candles. They were very long and tall candles. They were in candle holders or candlesticks or whatever you want to call them.
Okay.
And there was one burning on either side of the girl lying on the altar.
Now, besides the girl and the guy with the flute, was there anybody else in the church?
There was nobody there but those three people, myself and the guy on the lectern and the girl on the altar.
Very
And I looked around. I saw nobody. So it was a very peculiar situation.
Now, what about when we'll get back to what was going on inside, but before you went in or when you came back out, did you notice any other unusual cars or extra cars that shouldn't be there?
No. The setup for the church is such that it's separated from the roadway. There's I guess you would call it a roundabout. There's a large lawn in front of the Memorial Church complex, and then beyond the lawn there's a road, and from the road there's a set of stairs, and then across that you have to cross a sort of a plaza going past another set of lawns and some outbuildings. Then there's a main square in front of the church, and then there's a large area from those outbuildings across the square to the steps of the church itself. And so in the front of the church, there was no road access. In the back, there could have been, but as I walked up there, I didn't notice anything. There was no particular place for anyone to park that I could see.
Okay. So now, take us back. We're in the church. The guy's playing the flute. Does he stop playing the flute when he sees you, or does he just continue?
He continues playing, but all the time he's glaring at me. He has very intense eyes. He's a very thin young man, I would say, early 20s, and he is looking out from underneath his eyebrows while he's playing this flute in very dramatic fashion, a very powerful piece that he was playing. And as I said, it was a very peculiar, unusual, unique piece of music, and the way he was playing it gave me the impression that it was his music.
So now,
because as I said, I didn't feel like I recognized it from any other kind of contemporary or classical music that I'd heard before.
Now you describe him as a thin guy. Did he appear to have the physical strength to be able to pull off a murder like this and position the body in the way that things were ultimately?
He had long arms and strong-looking shoulders. I had the impression, well, I do have the impression now, that he would have had the strength to do this.
Okay. All right, so then what else happened next? He's playing the flute, she's lying, and she's smiling at you. What's next?
Well, I had the impression that perhaps these people were really, really stoned. I had the impression that perhaps they were on some kind of an acid trip, and that they were playing at doing some kind of a black mass. I didn't have the impression that the girl was under any kind of stress. The guy was looking at me as though I was not welcome, but I was a third party and I should leave. And so under the impression that they were having some sort of a private situation going on in a public place, I didn't feel like it was my place to say anything or do anything. So I turned around and walked back down the aisle and back into the alcove.
Now, your physical size and strength compared to him, like let's say a fight broke out, do you think you could take him?
Well, I have not fought with any maniacs recently, but I think that I'm probably relatively strong. I could have at least put up a decent fight at that point. If I felt like there was any reason to jump in and stop what was going on, I would have.
Gotcha.
Stepped up, but I didn't have any impression whatsoever that there was any tension there, except for the fact that he wanted me to leave.
Gotcha. You just thought it was a guy with his naked chick, and oops. Did you say anything like that? Oops, sorry. And as you walked out, or just turned around and walked out?
I said nothing. I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and
gotcha.
And I turned around and I walked out.
And you were about 20 feet away.
There's a little bit more. A little bit more.
Okay.
When I walked out, I thought, well, they're doing their thing, stoned or not. I don't want to become involved in it, and there's no reason to. So as I was walking in the alcove, I decided to take advantage of this opportunity in the church. I wanted to see what the machinery of the organ looked like, believe it or not. And so I walked through a glass door on the left, up a winding stairwell, up into the choir loft. And I knew there was a door that went from the floor of the choir loft down into the place where they kept the machinery for the organ. So when I walked up there, I could still hear the guy playing, and in front of me was this black door going down into the organ machinery. And at that point, I began to feel creepy. I began to feel like there was an odd situation going on, and I had the heebie-jeebies. I didn't want to go through that black door. I didn't know where the light was. I just had a bad feeling. And so I walked back down the stairs, and I left.
Now, during that portion of your visit there, were you in their view? Could they see you walking up and down these stairs and doing all this stuff?
They may have been able to see me once I'd gotten up into the choir loft itself. But going up the stairs and down, no.
Okay. All right. So now, when did you... I guess, okay, now, you didn't think anything when you left that night. When did you realize that this was connected to the Arlis Perry murder?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that a day or two later, part of my job, I was required to fly out of my area down to Southern California. And when I got on the plane, I'd sat down, and a couple of seats in front of me on the right, some guy had a San Jose Mercury newspaper in front of him, and I saw the front page. It said something like "Murder at Stanford Church," and I exclaimed, "Oh my God! I was just there a couple days ago." And I didn't have a chance to read the paper. I just saw the flash of the headline, and I thought, "Wow, that's so weird. I was just there." And I thought of the weird guy and the girl, but as I said, when I was there, there was no indication of any violent intent, no nervousness on the part of the girl, blah, blah, blah. I just thought it was very odd that I had been in the same place and that that murder had occurred. I didn't know when it happened. I didn't know that it was the same night that I had been there. I just knew that it was the same location. So anyway, I fly to San Diego, and I do my job. And frankly, I didn't think anything more of it because being out of town, there was nothing that would have excited my interest. No one was talking about it. I tend not to watch television. I've gone for years at a time without watching TV, so I didn't see any TV reports. I didn't hear it on the radio. I didn't read the newspaper. And then I went back to my job, and from there I drove off to some other gigs, which required that I travel up and down California. So it just went out of my purview. I didn't think any more of it for a long time. Well, 38 years later,
Well, okay, before we get to the 38 years, about a year or two after that, right around that same general period of time, 74 to 76, were the Son of Sam murders in New York. Were you aware of that?
I think I read something about them long after it happened, but I was not really aware at the time of those things.
Okay, see, it's such a difference from my life because I lived in New York at the time, and this was daily news and on the TV. You know, it was such a big deal for us. Okay, but where you were...
Like I said, I would go for years at a time. I'd never watched television.
Oh, really?
When I listened to radio, mostly it was music, not news programs. And so basically I was not aware of what was going on around me in terms of current news.
Okay, and how old were you in 1974?
Let's see. Well, I'm 64 now. Do the math. I must have been early 20s. I must have been about the same age as the guy that I saw.
Okay. All right. So now, 38 years later, how do you make the connection?
Well, I'm talking to a friend of mine who happens to be a policeman, and he's getting ready to retire. And he's telling me war stories about the peculiar situations he's been in. And this made me think back to this strange thing that I'd seen at the church. I told him, about the guy playing the flute and the girl on the altar, and us laughing, how weird things were back in the 70s and so on. And he looked at me funny, and he said, that case has never been solved, I don't think. And that was news to me. But we had a few more minutes of conversation, and then he left. He went on a vacation for a week. But when he came back, I met him at the same coffee shop, and he said that during that week he'd done research on the case, that in fact it had not been closed, and that in his research he found out that there was one person there, which other people had seen enter the church, that they could not account for, that they'd interviewed everyone else, but not this one white kid, about 20, 23, thereabouts, who was seen entering the church, and he had never been interviewed. And I thought, oh my God, that must be me. And so immediately I put down my coffee cup and I went to the Palo Alto Sheriff's Department, which is right near Stanford University. And I told them that I believed that I was a witness to the Arlis murder. All four of the sheriffs there were very interested. They all knew about this murder, and they sent me up to see the, I don't know what you call them, the head of the department or whatever for the sheriff's department. Right. I told them the same story. They gave me the phone number for a cold case investigator, and when I called him up, he asked if I would be interested in meeting a detective to tell him my story. And I agreed, and subsequently, that's what I did. I made the initial report on December 14th, 2011, and I had the interview with the sheriff's detective on December 15th, 2011. And there I met two investigators who interviewed me on tape. I described to them what I just told you about my meeting of these people at the Stanford Memorial Church. And I also volunteered to give them my DNA just to make sure that they realized or knew that I was willing to count myself out as being a person involved in a situation myself. I know that sometimes people come forward and they want to make themselves seem larger than life, and they want to become part of history and tell false stories. But I wanted to eliminate myself as being the suspect because I knew that he had left DNA evidence and a handprint at the scene. So after the interview, I went home and went to sleep. And about 5 o'clock in the morning, I suddenly woke up. I had realized that I had seen the person in the church on another occasion.
Okay.
And he was wearing the same wig. And it turns out that he was playing an instrument at a Stanford football game. And so using that information, I was able to go on the internet and research who was at Stanford at that time playing instruments. And as soon as I saw his face, I recognized him. And I called up the police and gave them that information.
Now, that's interesting because we just last Friday night when we were chatting about this, I was doing a live show actually. The chat room was chatting around us. They had mentioned we were bringing you on, and everyone was trying to figure out, who this could be. And the Stanford marching band is an odd group. They're into some kind of wacky stuff, pranks and.
Well, they're very, very eclectic people, no doubt about it. They're known for being very mischievous and very unique, let's say, in their attitudes and their playing style. And I think that occasionally some people that come on there are not even members of the band. But anybody who has the right attitude, I guess, or the wrong attitude, depending on your point of view, they can play in the band.
Yeah, you described that much better than I did. Yeah. Okay, so you recognize the flute player, and it turns out that he's a well-known, famous flute player. Is that correct?
Yes and no. Okay. He was not at the time, but he subsequently became very, very famous. If I told you what he did now, you would instantly recognize him. He's won lots of awards. He has a lot of academic honors. He has created various compositions that would make it very easy for you to say who he was.
So even someone like
on that because go ahead.
Yeah, even someone like me who's like not a flute fan whatsoever, but I would recognize this name if I heard it.
Well, you're under the misimpression that his composition was strictly for flute. It's not.
Okay.
He played all kinds of music, many different instruments, and for the most part, he's a man who creates compositions. He does not necessarily happen to be the instrument player himself.
Gotcha.
So not just a flout.
Okay.
Not a flautist.
Yeah, the flautist. Okay, we're having a little debate, too, about how to pronounce all that. Okay. Now, is this person, because I know I asked you off the air if you could tell me off the record, and you declined to do that, which is fine, okay? That's.
Mm-hmm.
But now, is this person, is he like an odd person? Does he have an occult connection? If we knew this famous person's name, does he have any of those kind of connections? Anything weird we would spot and say, oh, boy, that makes sense?
Oh, yes.
Really?
Oh, yes. Yeah, he's a very peculiar person, in my opinion. He has a lot of darkness around him. He likes to talk, think, and write about death, particularly involving women. And my opinion, after doing a lot of background research on this guy, listening to his music, listening to his lyrics, I think that circumstantially, boy, he's a very interesting person as a possible suspect.
And he would be about your age as well, then, right?
That is correct.
Today. Okay.
Now, here's another thing to throw out there, and that is doing the research on the guy. I did a search on the date of October 12th, which is the date that Arlis Perry was murdered. Well, it just so happens that very famous occultist and black magician and Satanist named Aleister Crowley was born October 12th. And so I suspect that this might have been a homage murder, where Arlis basically was sacrificed to honor and worship Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
Now, that is speculation, but it seems like a good match, given what I know of these people involved.
Yeah, and it seems to be that seems to be the common theory. Now, this flautist, did he have any connections to a cult called the Satanic Church of the Final Judgment, the Process Church of the Final Judgment?
Well, yes and no. I know about that, but I think that they are, in fact, an offshoot of Thelema. And Thelema was the church put together by Aleister Crowley. So I can say yes and no, that I think that this person might have been involved with Thelema. And in fact, I found out that he lived right near one of the, I don't know what you call it, a church or a coven or whatever it is for Thelema. They had one nearby where he lived.
And did you notice if he had any kind of connection to the Church of Scientology? Did you look that up?
This I do not know.
Okay.
This I do not know.
Yeah, because
all I saw that was peculiar to me and that seemed like a good fit was Thelema, being that he was acting out perhaps for the birth of Aleister Crowley, and he did have Thelema meeting place right near his home.
Because I don't
That's
know if
when he was younger.
I don't know if you're aware that Process is an offshoot of Scientology, and L. Ron Hubbard was an associate of Crowley, and also Jack Parson, who was a Satanist involved with NASA.
Yes, I knew about that, and their lifestyle and attitudes seem to fit well with what this person is like, the one that I'm describing as the flautist.
Now, were you aware of this?
He had a lot of peculiar things that he did at Stanford. He was known as being a very, I don't know what you would call him, unique, maybe peculiar person. And he was banned from certain events because of his actions at Stanford. So he fits the profile, I guess you would call it, as someone who might be interested in doing satanic type things.
And he did graduate from Stanford?
Oh, yes, he did.
Okay.
And he went on to other schools as well. And he also created various other organizations involved with music.
Oh boy! Well, I guess it's more fun if we have to guess, right? Now, you know what I'm saying? Look, more ratings for us. Now, did you have any kind of interest or research of the occult and Crowley and stuff like that before this event, or did all this come later on after you saw the connection to that you witnessed this event?
I had no interest whatsoever in it. I had no connection with it. I didn't practice it. I didn't think about it. I didn't know anybody who was involved with it. But subsequent to this event, and frankly, not until I made the report in 2011 did I start looking into this kind of stuff. And I began to see what appeared to be connections to Thelema and Crowley.
Gotcha. Okay.
So as I said, this is all speculation, but the flavor is there. It feels like it would be a good fit for this guy's lifestyle and his attitudes.
Now, has anybody ever mentioned the name Bill Menser to you?
Who?
Bill Menser?
I know the name.
Describe.
In what reference?
Well, and again, you know, he's a convicted murderer. He's in prison. He's a hitman. He was murdered. Roy Radin, who was part of this Process Church cult, and David Berkowitz, the son of Sam in New York, he places Bill Menser, at that murder scene. Now, you said, okay, you were interviewed by these two detectives, these cold case detectives and stuff like that. Now, ultimately, along the way, they did actually question, well, how did this come about? This flautist or this composer was questioned about this, correct?
No, he was not.
I thought I read, okay, maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought I read in the New York Post article that the private investigator, who was currently a private investigator, but he was the head detective in charge of the Arlis investigation, that he went like undercover to interview this composer before a concert in a green room?
Well, actually, that was me, along with the investigator.
Okay. Now, I'm trying to get him, we're trying to book him next to come on the show. He's checking with the current investigators to see if it's okay. So now you and him get together. How did that come about?
Well, in the course of finding this guy, who I originally saw at the Stanford Memorial Church, I started doing research on the Arlis murder, and I discovered the name and picture of this cold case investigator who has since retired. He's now a private detective.
Byman, something like that?
So I contacted him.
What's his name? Byman?
Yes, his name is Randy Bynum.
Yeah, Bynum.
Randy Bynum. And so, in fact, I made the initial report on December 14th, and I did the interview on December 15th, but prior to making the meeting, I contacted Randy Bynum and asked him if he would like to attend the meeting, seeing as he had been a cold case investigator and that he had an interest in the case. I thought perhaps all three of us, the current cold case investigator, the retired cold case investigator, and me as the witness, should meet all together at the same time, which is what we did. We met at a Chili's restaurant down in Morgan Hill, California on December 15th, and they both interviewed me and put the interview on tape.
And then after, how did it come about that you went to go visit the composer, though?
Well, Randy Bynum called me up, and he said, this was about a month after the initial interview, he said that he knew that this particular person, whom I had already given him the name, that he was going to appear at a concert in California. Would I be interested in going? And at the time, I was pretty busy with work, and frankly, I didn't feel too enthusiastic about visiting a murderer and having him recognize me. And who knows what could happen as a result of that. But on second thought, I decided that, I had an obligation to this girl who was killed, and no one else was going to do it. Apparently, I was the only person who could place this guy at the scene, and so I decided to go meet him and see what I could see.
Now, you said it was
December. So I called up Bynum.
Right.
What?
You said it was December 15th, 2011, if I'm correct, when you went to visit these sheriffs. How much time passed before you went to go to this concert?
It was about a month.
About a month, okay.
Yeah. And so at first I didn't want to go, and I told Bynum that. And then I decided that I would go, and I told Bynum that, and he did not want to go. But then he changed his mind, and he decided he wanted to go. And so he met me in Southern California for this concert with a psychologist. And he and the psychologist and myself met this guy at the end of a concert, and we interviewed him in the green room on tape. And basically, I was pretending that I was a stringer for the Associated Press. That's how I got access there.
Okay.
And these other people were my associates. And that's why we were interviewing him on tape.
Now,
in the course of the interview, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, did you have any kind of phonied up press credentials, or did you make advanced preparations?
No. I called the Associated Press. I told them that I was going to go to this concert, and I asked them whether or not they would be interested in a freelancer attending this and giving them a story and photographs. And they were kind of weakly interested. They told me, go ahead, and if you have anything interesting afterwards, we'll take a look at it. But there were no promises involved. And so I had the cover of saying that the AP knew that I was going there. They knew my name, and I gave them my phone number.
Right.
And so I had no credentials, but I did have a good cover story.
Now, when you were making the arrangements, though, for the interview to get into the green room, how did you make those advances? Did you make the arrangements in advance, or you just showed up at the concert and said, hey, let me try and get backstage?
I just showed up. I
showed
up, and I talked to the organizers there. I told them that I was a stringer for AP, that I had a couple of associates with me. We wanted to interview the guy for the performance as well as for his career, and they agreed. They liked the publicity.
Okay, and did you have like a professional camera with you, a professional recorder, or you just kind of bluffed the whole thing?
I did not have a professional recorder with me, but the detective, Randy Bynum, and his associate did have professional recorders. I did take a couple of photographs of the guy but not with a professional camera, but I do still have those photos.
Okay. And you've never published the photos?
I not only took pictures of him, but I also took pictures of his mother, his father, and his children, who were also attending the concert.
Okay. And was this a big concert venue or a small, intimate kind of place?
It was fairly large, and believe it or not, tell me this is ironic or not, it was being held in a church.
Ooh. Wow. Okay.
How's that for weird?
No, when you look into this occult stuff, that's pretty common. They like to defile churches, Now, okay, you start to interview him. What did you get into his kind of a possible occult involvement or anything like that?
No. Basically, my idea in pretending that I was a reporter was to ask him questions relating to two things. Had he ever played a flute? And did he ever wear a wig, an Afro wig? And he sort of blew off the flute question. He said he played lots of instruments, which really tells you nothing. But he did say that he did have a wig. And I asked him what he did with that Afro wig. And he said, I threw that out a long time ago. It was in my closet for years, but I threw it out or burned it or something. I never do that thing anymore. I never wear the wig anymore. So that to me was the confirmation that he was the guy. He was the guy wearing the Afro wig. How many people wear an Afro wig at any time when they're a white guy? Very peculiar. And so when he admitted that, I had this rush of adrenaline. I wanted to jump over the table and grab him and say that he was under arrest for the murder of Arlis Perry. Citizen's arrest for the murder of Arlis Perry. But being that I was there with a detective, I deferred to what they were doing, and I did not jump up. I did not grab him. We concluded the interview, and as we walked out, I asked that very question of the detective, why didn't we just grab him right then? And they said that there was more evidence to gather, that we needed to do it through proper channels. We did not want the guy to, quote-unquote, lawyer up, and that he did have a lot of influence and money, and that we should proceed carefully because if he was the guy, then we did not want to do anything that would permit him the opportunity to escape justice, which makes sense to me.
Now, when you first mentioned the Afro wig, I had assumed that it was like a comical type wig. Is this man balding that he would wear a wig? Was it that type of wig, or was it a comical wig?
Well, think back to the Stanford Marching Band. Right. What kind of costumes do they wear there? Anything that looks peculiar, funny, interesting, exciting, whatever. So people, they wear a duck costume. They could wear an Afro wig. They can go nude. I don't know what they do, but whatever they do, it's going to be not subtle. Let's put it that way. And so for him to be a member of the band and to be wearing a Afro wig, it seems to fit.
Okay. And so you would say that then it was more of a comical wig. Was he balding?
I couldn't tell that because he was wearing a wig.
No, I mean, like
but, when I did meet him at the venue during the interview, he had very short cropped hair.
Okay, short cropped.
But he still had the same eyes. It was the same face. I knew it was the guy. And when he said that he had the wig, it was 100%. I knew absolutely this was the guy.
Now, did he become suspicious of your questions?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the detective that I was with, he tended to ask questions like a detective, not like a reporter. And so I had the impression that this guy that we were interviewing began to get suspicious about us. And at the end of the interview, he looked at all of us, the three of us there, questioning him. And he said that he decided that he was not going to come back to California anymore and do any more concerts. And as far as I know, that in fact has been true. Since 2011, he's not come back to California and done any more concerts whatsoever.
And today he lives in New York?
So, that is correct.
Okay, does he do concerts in New York?
He does concerts all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a, I guess you would call him international.
Now, the next event, I guess, would
And
be...
I should also add that he doesn't just do concerts himself. He composes, and other people play his music various places. I don't know that he would necessarily be at every venue wherever his compositions are being played.
Okay. Now, how did the New York Post get notified of all this?
I asked them the same question.
Okay.
And they refused to tell me. I said that they had confidential sources. I pressed them on it several times. They still would not tell me. And so just the fact that they called me up and they knew my name, my phone number, and the name of the person that I had named was enough to convince me that the cat was already out of the bag, and that for me to pursue my total silence was pointless. And so that's why I decided to come forward, not only to reveal to the perpetrator that there was a witness, but also to, frankly, help build a fire underneath the Sheriff's Department, given the fact that I had made the report 5 years ago, and they had not, to my knowledge, gone forward and requested DNA from this suspect. Made me feel very uncomfortable. I began to get the feeling that perhaps they were just concerned about the cost of sending detectives across the country, putting them up in New York, and then either surreptitiously or directly getting DNA from the alleged perpetrator and then bringing it back. I had the feeling they didn't want to spend the money.
Yeah, that wouldn't be surprising.
For a murder, and it's a cold case murder. I know that they have plenty of current active cases where their funding must go now, and so I had the feeling that they were just letting it slide because it was old and it was too expensive to pursue.
Now, back to how the New York Post was tipped off. Now, Bynum doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who inserts himself into things. He's looking for publicity, okay? Now,
no.
You're right, yeah, I would rule him out. Now, there was a third person with you and Bynum who attended this interview?
That is correct. I'm not going to name that person right now.
Okay.
I think that I should contact them first and let them know that a lot of people might be interested and whether or not they would like to become involved. But frankly, I think the source of the tip-off was myself. One thing I didn't mention was that in the course of the research, I found out about Thelema and Crowley and so on. And one of the things that I did was I saw the article about the connection between Berkowitz and the Arlis Perry murder, where Berkowitz said that he knew who it was and that the guy was a member of their satanic group or coven or whatever it was, and they went out and killed people. And so seeing that, I decided to write a letter to Berkowitz.
Oh.
And in the letter, I took a series of, I forget how many, 5 or 6 or 7 different photos that I just took off the internet at random. And in the mix, I put in a picture of the suspect. And I asked Berkowitz to pick out the person that he knew was involved in the Arlis Perry murder. And I never heard back from him, but I did hear from other sources that the people in the prison where he's being kept in New York intercepted the letter, and they were interested in the fact that I was trying to contact Berkowitz. And so I think that is the source of the contact for revealing my information to the New York Post. It's my fault for contacting Berkowitz, and the police authorities currently relayed that to other people.
Now, okay, that all makes sense. Now, back to the composer. Do you know if he had any connections to Studio 54? in New York during that period of time, you know?
Well, I appreciate your effort. I think you're trying to, corral me into revealing who he was and who he was associated with, and it would make it fairly easy for you then to figure out exactly who he is. But as I said, I'm still hoping that the police will pursue this. This will build a fire under them, but at the same time, as they said, it will not incite the guy to lawyer up and to, leave the country or whatever. And so, at least for the short term, I'm still going to keep his identity secret.
No, I understand, and I'm not going to kid you. I have been fishing for clues, obviously, but the reason why I brought up specifically Studio 50. Well, I know I'm not totally untransparent, but I know that I brought up Studio 54 in particular because this Berkowitz cult in New York, had many connections to Studio 54. So that's why I'm curious if the composer, or the suspect we can call him, had any connections to Studio 54.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Hamptons.
Well, that's an interesting idea. Perhaps I'll look into that myself.
Okay, yeah, good. We keep in touch. Now, or the Hamptons, too. You want to look into the Hamptons, Roy Radin, the Castle Mansion, and the Hamptons. Another thing you want to look into. Now, what about Maury Terry? Did you ever get in touch with Maury Terry?
Maury Terry?
The author of the book, The Ultimate Evil?
No, I have not talked with him.
Okay, he's the guy who originally picked up this connection from Berkowitz, the connection Arlis Perry to this cult.
Yeah, I remember reading about that, but I never actually talked with him.
Okay. Now, what made you connect with William Ramsey, my producer, the author of these books about Crowley, and because of his article about Arlis Perry?
Yes. Also, I found him on Facebook. I was looking for satanic connections and people that were involved in things of this sort who were interested in it. And William Ramsey popped up, and he seemed like an interesting source. And so he is a friend of mine on Facebook.
Okay, now, since you've gone to the Post has come out with this article, have you received any kind of threats or any kind of suspicious activity around your life?
I've had some peculiar phone calls where people don't say anything, but no overt threats. No one has come out and said, I'm going to kill you.
How about people curious and just wanting to ask you questions, besides me?
Yes. I've had some people approach me asking whether or not I would like to write a screenplay
We discussed
about the situation.
Okay. All right.
I'm considering it. I'm a writer, and so that's what I do. But I don't see a conclusion yet. When you write something, it's always nice to know where it's going to end, and I don't have an end point yet.
Okay. Is there anything I've forgotten to ask you, do you think?
Yes.
Oh, great.
You forgot to ask me whether or not I thought the guy was involved with more than one murder besides Arlis Perry.
Okay, great. What do you got?
Well, in the course of my research, I found out that this guy had been around the Stanford campus longer than I would have guessed, and that he may have been involved in at least two other murders. One of them was a girl named Leslie Perlov, Perlov, and she was found up in the hills above Stanford. She had been strangled, and she had her dress put up above her waist to reveal her private parts. But she also, as Arlis, had not been actually sexually penetrated. And so that, to me, indicates a possible parallel, both with the timeline and with the way that she was killed. That's one thing. And there was another person, I don't have his name in front of me, but he was a tutor in one of the departments that this flautist was involved with. And he was strangled, this time with, I think, wrapping tape or masking tape or some kind of tape. A roll of tape was used to strangle him. Someone came up from behind him and strangled him with this tape. Well, about a week after the murder of that guy, the person that I'm talking about decided to take a sabbatical overseas, and he stayed there for a year, which to me indicates something because, there is a direct physical connection between the people in terms of the tutoring and the campus, and the fact that he then leaves town, that tells me something. But again, this is all speculation.
Right. And you were able to find this, I guess this guy has like an online bio or something like that, or maybe he wrote a book, and you were able to find out that he took a sabbatical overseas around the same time?
Yeah, in terms of doing the research, and not only does he have a very large public presence, he has a bio, he has a catalog of his music, he's all over YouTube, he's all over the place.
Okay.
He has, like I said, he has many awards, he has many prestigious positions, he's involved with other universities besides Stanford, and so, it's not that terribly difficult to get more information on the guy.
Okay, and it's amazing how many people, Mapplethorpe, and who's Patti Smythe, how many famous artists and musicians stuff travel in these circles with this cult. John Lennon and Yoko Ono met in London at the Indica Art Gallery that was run by the Protestant Church. The same cult was running that art gallery. They seem to have their hands in so many things all over the world. So it doesn't surprise me at all that this guy would be a rich and famous artist. So now, that you think that's the only question?
I'm also thinking perhaps that he had some sort of connection with Manson.
Oh, really?
And I was thinking of actually going to meet Manson and, again, show him a list of photographs and asking him to pick the guy out of the lineup. But unfortunately, my contacts tell me that Manson is now in isolation in Corcoran. And if you thought he was nuts before, apparently he is just completely out of it. So there may not be any point in interviewing Manson at this point.
Well, there's absolutely a connection between this cult and Manson. As a matter of fact, I have a copy of an INS police report from that period of time that describes that the Manson family, they were sewing the Protestant Church emblems into their blankets when they were being held.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So there's an absolute, and Manson's he's came out of Scientology too. All connections, all fits. Okay, but now what makes you think there's a connection to Manson, though?
Well, again, doing the research about Berkowitz and doing the research about Thelema, there were apparent connections between them, and just as you said, there in fact were. And so whether or not Manson knew specifically about what Berkowitz was doing and his involvement with that group, I don't know. But that was my impression, that Manson might know something about it. So I wanted to ask him in person, but I don't think it's possible. Yeah,
one other thing, too, is that in that same INS report from that period of time, they mention that Sharon Tate, Sirhan Sirhan was at a party at Sharon Tate's house, and that was a Protestant Church party, and that Papa Phillips from the Mamas and the Papas was funding the process activity in California around that time. Now, would this composer have any kind of connection with those kind of artists, like people like Mama Cass and Carole King, Papa Phillips, those kind of people? Papa John?
Those names and personalities and profiles I don't think would fit necessarily with what this guy does.
Okay.
He tends towards darker music. And I think that the people that he would associate with would not be like the Mamas and the Papas.
Okay.
That seems pretty far-fetched to me.
Okay. But not like heavy
metal.
metal.
You know something that I don't. I don't know.
We know a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. I talk to people off the air about all this kind of stuff too. So I got all that information as well. We should talk off the air if you like. Okay, you know what? We're pretty much.
I think we should share some information. Perhaps together we can come up with more information that would help the police.
Yeah.
Come up with this guy and deal with him. I would like that.
Yeah. Off the air.
I really feel that he needs to have justice.
Yeah.
Off the air. Yeah. I'm 64. He's about the same age. I want this to be resolved before I die, before he dies. It's going to really piss me off if I die before he gets convicted.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
I mean, he really needs to have justice done.
Okay.
Arlis Perry shouldn't have been killed this way, and it's very, very ugly the way he did it.
What about the husband of Arlis Perry? Did he ever contact you?
I tried contacting him, but I never got anything back from him.
Right.
I did talk to Arlis Perry's mother and father,
Okay.
and they were not happy to talk with me. I'm sure that they've had many people come out of the woodwork and declaring that they know all about it. And so I think they treated me as just another person who wanted to become part of the Arlis Perry history. Mm-hmm. And they basically blew me off. I don't blame them. And frankly, I didn't really want to go into details. I didn't want to tell the mother about the fact that Arlis didn't seem particularly embarrassed or unhappy about lying nude on this altar in a church with this weird flautist. So I didn't give her any details. I just let her know that a witness had come forward, and we left it at that.
Well, now let me ask you a question. Now, are you convinced that the woman on the altar looked exactly like Arlis Perry? But this is just an exact match, because there's always a possibility that they could have just swapped out girls. Maybe one girl was in there. They would want a dress rehearsal. You know, who knows? You know.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I didn't know Arlis Perry.
Right.
And I didn't know what she should or should not have looked like. All I know is that I was there on that date, and there was a girl on the altar. She was nude. She was white. She had light-colored hair. I saw her mostly in profile. How many other women could have been lying on that altar at midnight on a Saturday night at Stanford Memorial Church in 1974? Well, my guess is there was only one, and she ended up dead. So can I specifically say that was Arlis Perry? No. But under the circumstances, is it likely? Yes.
Okay. Now, is there anything else left you think you can tell us? Or you think we've covered it all?
Well, I think we pretty well covered things. I think we pretty much covered all the subjects. Unless you can think of anything else to ask me, then I think that will be it.
Yeah, I think we're very good, too. Brian McCracken, thank you so much. Okay, we have Brian McCracken. He's a brand new witness after 38 years in the murder of Arlis Perry. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ed Opperman. I appreciate the chance to talk about this, and I hope that as a result, Arlis Perry will get justice.
Okay, thank you.